What up, everybody? Scuff D here, and it's finally time for part one of the card by card for Chaos. Chaos card by card. Oh boy, it's a big pool, so we're just gonna get right into it. This is the last faction to cover in the card by card. As a neutral faction, there's so many cards in here. We're not doing one video. We're gonna do 3 videos. Today's video is breaking down the warlords all the way through the 2-cost energy cards, which is pretty significant. Actually, there's a lot of them. So with that being said, let's just get into it. Let's just start hashing it out. All right, so first off in the card by card, or the card list for the warlords, is Goreborne. Goreborne is pretty fun. Goreborne, I'm not going to lie, he's fun. He's not on the same level as Engron, but he punishes troop builds very much so. He gets +1/+0 when an enemy dies, and then can act again. And you can combo that very nicely by using your own troops to kill other troops or tactics. And you don't even have to attack repeatedly. He does have Berserk, so you have to attack at least once, but in some situations it might be better off to kill multiple troops, increase his attack significantly, and then just land one large hit. But in addition to that kind of gives him the option to potentially just pepper around and kill your opponent's entire board by himself. That's going to leave him a little low on the health side. He doesn't have a Reckoning, he doesn't have a Whispers, or he doesn't have anything extra bonus for that as a 40 hit point warlord, but he's very, very strong. He plays very well. He's got some very nice tools within the Chaos card pool itself. I think we'll kind of get to that eventually, but anything that can ping las rifle sections, artillery strikes, defensive satellites, informant network that can cause board-wide damage, any rally troops that have rally damage, but then also he got a big pickup fairly recently from the Galaxy in Flames with Displaced Civilians and Darkening Skies, which put out a lot of displaced civilians, and those are very low health, low attack troops that you can quickly eradicate with your own tactics and increase his attack even more. In addition, you pack on some additional tactics such as Greatest Duty in there, so he's healing one. You can do a lot with him, even though he's got 40 hit points. And he has to attack. He can put out a lot of burst damage, and your opponent, the later they go into the game, if they continue to play troops, they're really just feeding you. And if it's a troop deck, they kind of want to play troops, so they don't have an option. So if you play him smart, and when I say, I mean, he's Berserk Warlord, but he needs to be played smartly. You'd be surprised what you can do with him. If I had to choose between Goreborne and Engron, if they're facing up between each other, Goreborne is going to suffer between Engron as well as Kabanda to a degree. He can respond to Kabanda better. But Engron can just punish him, and Engron is not throwing down troops, so Goreborne gets nothing from Engron, which makes that a very difficult match. Same goes for maybe Jagathai Khan, although typically a good Goreborne player can burst him down before you get to that point. So Goreborne, very nice warlord. He came out in the Terra expansions. Keep your eye out for that, but very strong, very potent. I would recommend him. If you ever see him in the shop as a legendary warlord, I'd recommend him. Now, Chaos Spawn recently got a patch, got a buff. Wonderful little boy with 25 hit points. The only warlord in the game that has 25 hit points or hit points less than 30. He's got sneak attack. He now has gained this reduced maintenance of friendly demons by 2, which is very nice for him. And then for 2 energy, he can put and play a Chaos Spawn. He's got high initiative. Now, the Chaos Spawn has maintenance 1, but now that he can ignore the maintenance of that, he doesn't have to worry. He's not punished. He can continue doing that or just using sneak attack. But it's really handy for him to just be able to throw out some of these chaos demons, Terror Hounds, Beast of Fyra, maybe even Kazdrak. I wouldn't Draknian maybe, but I mean, if you're going to go big, go home. Teleth or Iriya. Iriya is nice, but you don't need it with sneak attack. Father Decay. Or just even the Remnant, which has got maintenance too. Just straight up ignoring that, like boom, because it's just a strong passive. The downside is he does have that 25 hit points. The upside is he's got high initiative and he's putting out troops. You should be putting out spawns when you can, so that way your opponent has to respond to them. They have to put damage on those troops as opposed to putting damage on your face. Chaos Spawn does suffer from direct damage builds, so when those are in circulation or you're running up against those, his window gets very small. It only takes 2 Chariot of the Gods and a Vengeful Spirit. That's 16 damage, not counting the turns that the opponent might have attacked or shot you in the face with other things. So you can see how very quickly he goes down. He needs some extra tools to kind of give him some health. Manifest Destiny is always a good legendary for units like him, but also some pinch healing or some solid frontline stuff to just give him that longevity. And as I said, if you are putting down targets that your opponent has to throw bodies into or tactics into, that actually prolongs his life too. So look at it that way. Ingethel is also benefiting of the maintenance by 2. Personally, I prefer her more, for a lot of reasons. Fluff-wise, she's a character. She's not a spawn. Spawn is the only character to date still that is just kind of a faceless multi-tool thing. We've had a couple of event warlords, like Veteran Sergeant or Imperial Sergeant or Command Bunker. But in terms of actual collectible warlords, Chaos Spawn is the only one. We even gave a name to Sergeant Cork. Before he was just Ogre and Sergeant. Now he actually has a name, so fine, he's a character, but you're not naming a Chaos Spawn. So Ingethel actually has a name. She actually serves a purpose. She's the prophet. She's the guide to the Eye of Terror for Lorgar. She's got the maintenance reduce by 2. I've covered that with Spawn, how beneficial that is. That's nice. But what's really nice is her Marks of Chaos. For 1 energy, she's giving a Mark of Chaos, but also an additional +1 to non-demon troops. The maintenance cost for her, the maintenance reduction, when I tend to build her, and I've shared Ingethel decks in the past, I think I've got a deck list video, you can take a look at that hasn't really changed much, that's for when I get greater demons, or if I play 1, maybe 2 demons in general, but I'm not demon heavy with her. Instead, I'm focusing on cultists or troops that are decent already, giving them increased stats with Marks of Chaos, making them stronger. Maybe they end up going to a greater demon, and then I still have that reduced maintenance by 2, which is nice, but that's not really what I'm banking on. This ability here does more for me than the maintenance reduction, which does more for Chaos Spawn, if that makes sense. So it's like if you want to lean into one, pick one. If you want to lean into the other, pick the other. That's the best way I can explain that. She's really fun, though. I like her. She does not have a damage dealing ability, but she is a very troop-focused ability that you can just make your troops stronger. And there are some troops that, your opponent does not want to see sticking around. Cygnus Fanatic getting, 5-6 health, that's a beefy boy who's going to heal every time one of your troops dies and get stronger. You might not even want to turn him into a demon at that point. It gives rise to, cards like Traitor Crew, which are getting you more Chaos Infantries, such as Cygnus. Fanatics, you can play it on, stealth troops because they're hidden. Acrotrez gaining extra health and then eventually turn into a demon after he's been healing your Ingethel for a while is kind of cool. Watchers in the Dark is another great target. These are all good, starting cards. Neaster Scouts, maybe, perhaps, even. And then you can just run Nurglings for the heck of it because, that's just a good troop in general. For Chaos. We're going to get to Nurglings here shortly, but I like Ingethel quite a bit. If I had to choose between the two, like I said, I'd pick her, but Spawn is strong. Spawn is strong, don't make no mistake. Speaking of strong, Canis Vertex. Oh, Canis Vertex. Wow. Oh, so I was going to say, does it record the games differently? No, it doesn't. It doesn't matter if it's premium or non-premium. Canis Vertex is a hot topic. Hot topic might be too strong. Maybe it's too strong. But it's a very powerful warlord. You got not just this warlord when you're playing Canis Vertex, but you also get 2 sets of Flaming Claws and 2 sets of Laser Blasters. So there's 5 pieces on the board total. Now that means initially you're playing with 2 troops that you can actually play, which means you're really focused more on tactics early game and using the energy to activate those abilities. For 2 Psyker, this can give shield to a warlord or titan. It has Psyker 1, so that kind of has to build up for a little bit. It's the only warlord currently that has very low initiative, the only collectible warlord that has very low initiative. So you'll get the Chaos counterattack with that as well. Now, the thing with the weapons, you've got laser blasters that can deal 3 damage. You've got flaming claws that can either close combat or then shoot with Psyker to deal some damage as well. If they get destroyed, they have meltdown, which then can cause more damage to the other Titan parts, including the warlord. It's a big beast to battle, but it's completely battleable, especially in the current state where we have got a lot of flanking out there. The Space Wolves have got a lot of flanking. The Raven Guard have got a lot of flanking. They can take down those weapons fairly easy and still have troops on the board because those parts, aside from the fists, have 0 attack. So they're not even taking damage. Or they can just focus on the face if they want to go that way. Is slow and clunky, but late game, if you get rid of one weapon, or if you've been focusing all your time on getting rid of the weapons, then he starts to put down big troops. And that's where it gets tricky, because then you got to deal with these big troops, but you still have to kill the warlord and its weapons that might be disrupting your plans. So there's just 2 strategies, in my opinion, when you're facing Canis Vertex. Number 1, go face all the way. Flank when you can, but go face and just whittle this thing down. Number 2, take out all the pieces. That's a little bit longer, but when you shut down a Canis Vertex and they don't have any other pieces yet, and sometimes you can snowball one meltdown into another meltdown, you can quickly eliminate this thing. It's not fun to play. I don't have fun playing Canis, in my opinion. I don't have fun playing against Canis. It's just a slow, plodding game. If you're playing the Titan event that's going on currently right now, or you've played a Titan event in the past, you can kind of understand. If you've faced Canis Vertex, you can understand. It's strong. It has its moments where it's powerful and where it's doing a lot of work, but then it has those moments where it's not. And sometimes I feel like it waxes and wanes just because people get tired of playing it. But I don't think that's the case. I think there are some points where it's just like, you know what, it's just too slow and you need a faster deck. Right now the game is very fast. The game can respond before Canis can really do anything, and that's not where Canis wants to be. In addition, Space Wolves have wards, so your laser blasters aren't going to be doing you much help. So, yeah. Captured Mandragorax is the Titan I enjoy the most, quite frankly. I love Captured Mandragorax. As you can see, I've been playing tons. This is my casual, like whenever I'm just kind of bored or got to get through some dailies, especially like a play tactics challenge. I'll just play Mandragorax. And for me, the deck I've got is a burn deck for 2 energy. It deals 2 damage to 2 random enemies. I can very easily control that with a variety of tactics that are also doing damage, whether that is informant networks, defensive satellites, artillery strikes, mortar strikes, ricochets. There's so much things that you can just throw in here as a burn, and then use the ability, and you're still hitting what you want to hit because you've killed the things that you might not have been able to kill just with the ability, and then you're still hitting the warlord for 2. And that deck in general feels like a Titan battle. It feels like you're walking through this field of where just missiles and there's incendiaries going off and things are blown up and you're zapping. It's fun for me, and that's why I play that, because it feels the vibe of a Titan battle I want, a little faster paced as a Warhound, as opposed to the plodding, clunky monstrosity of Canis. But it's a fun warlord. It was just recently in the shop here, and it's a legendary from the early expansion. I think Isfon 3, Isfon 5, Isfon 5. Pick it up when you get the chance. You'll have fun. It's not going to take you to crazy places, but at the same time, it also serves a purpose. It can very easily respond to Defenders of Caliban, to Raven Guard, to Night Lords, anything that has low health stealth stuff that likes to sit up. It doesn't matter, because you're going to deal 2 damage to the enemy warlord and 2 damage to that stealth troop. And then your opponent has to throw that stealth troop out at you, or they're going to lose it. Or they have to play multiple troops that they don't want to play, and then you play something like defensive satellites, and then follow it up from there. It's very easy to play, and some matches, it just, some matchups, I should say, don't favor it. Now, on the other hand, Salamanders, Custodes, high health, high survivor abilities, those do give it a run for its money because you can only do so much damage. Control, Caleb Decima, Mortarion, they're going to shut down the Mandragorax ability for the most part, and you're going to have to rely on your tactics. And that's okay, but it's good to have some support in there if possible, depending on how you build it. So, but it's flexible. You don't have to do all burn. You could do an entire Mechanicum support build if you want and just use the ability as needed. It's entirely up to you. Escape Vent. Now, this is a great zero-cost energy card. We're getting into the tactics now. Before we get into the tactics, if I had to rank these warlords, these are all good warlords. Honestly, they're all good, but if I had to pick my favorite, I kind of talked about how Mandragorax I play the most. I think Goreborne is the strongest. Then I would follow it up with Mandro. Mandro can be strong in certain metas, personally, but you have to play him a certain way. They all have fun. I'm going to put Canis at the bottom. But if you can pick up a warlord, pick up a warlord. If you get the chance to do it, get the chance to do it. Chaos Spawn was in the meta report recently. Chaos Spawn can be in the meta report. Surprise. These are all playable. You can play anything and get it into high or low Terra. Really, if you just got enough dedication. Some people don't like to believe that or don't follow suit with it, but it's entirely possible. You just have to, want to do it. Now, Escape Vent gives stealth to a friendly infantry or Astartes unit until your next turn. That's very cool. It's a great way to set up combos. It's a great way to protect troops that you are comboing with. For instance, the Blood Angels love to have landing. And in addition with landing, maybe they'd like to use Last Stand. And that's a perfect thing to throw on. Let's say whether it's Medidas or Elia Janus. Boom. He's got Drop Pod. Then he gets Stealth. Then his landing's going to go off and he can throw out his Last Stand. Works great with Ascalon, who can offer a third level of protection by potentially having Frontline. But there's other troops out there as well. For instance, the Traitors, the infamous Falconing deck. Tyranthicos veterans are often the target for an Escape Vent. These guys can go off, go ham, and be a one-turn kill if they survive and that Mortar Strike doesn't hit them. Because 9 times out of 10, 9.99 times out of 10, it hits these guys. But if it doesn't, boom, they're going to go off. It's just a good card. If you're building a combo around a troop setup, Argus Brond is another good example. Promeus for the Agents of the Sigilant. Then consider packing in Escape Vents, because that's going to make it much more likely. You know what's really prevalent right now? It's Space Wolves. You don't like Space Wolves? How about you don't like Space Wolves because they can get Curse of the Wolf and get +2/+2 and Survivor. You know what's even worse is when they throw down that Jortan Stalker Squad or that Halfdan Baelai and they give it Escape Vent to boot. So you don't have a chance, because even if you play your anti-stealth, you probably don't have enough energy left to take care of it so that it can't survive, so that they can't play that Curse of the Wolf. Escape Vent, baby. It's strong. It's strong. Those wolves, they're in the ducks. Now, not as strong is Underhive Tunnels. Underhive Tunnels gives Duplicitous just to a friendly infantry. Duplicitous, nowhere near as strong as Stealth. And this can go to infantry or Astartes. The difference is, this is permanent Duplicitous, whereas Escape Vent is just till the end of turn. So it's entirely possible if you want to Underhive Tunnels your Jubok, or your pick another high infantry or low infantry that you like to use, Kai's Lane, Coriel Zeth, Duke Melchador, the Duke Mordachev, the guy from the Duke, or maybe you want to protect your newly acquired. Where is she at? There she is. Niera Sukasan. Protect her. Now she's got Duplicitous. It's not Stealth, but she is Duplicitous all of a sudden for the remainder of the game, unless you're attacking with her. So then your opponent can't target her or attack her with their Warlord. It has a purpose, but as I said, it's not as strong as Escape Vent, which is typically what you want. It exists. Wounded Zealot is not something you will ever put in your deck, ever. You might have it in your Loken starter deck. The art is actually not too bad. He does have a wound. He has that wound on the leg. That's where his wound is. He's about to have a head wound, it looks like. But they'll never be in your deck. However, there are some cards that spawn zealots or wounded zealots, righteous zealots that create wounded zealots. So there'll be ways to get them out there. Just as a 1/1 cultist, at least they've got the cultist icon. That's about it. Abisha, that's about it. It's a 3/1 berserk. This guy's gonna die to a frag grenade or anything. Basically, anything will kill this guy, but it does 3, so your opponent does want to target them versus targeting your warlord. Kabbalist, generic 2/1 cultist, generic, but you can create those guys with where are they? Where are the guys that pump them out like candy? Or there's lots of. I mean, to be fair, I'm just looking at the troops here, but there are other tactics or troops that make cultists. So it's entirely possible for you to generate more cultists by playing those cards. Tancred, that's the guy. He just can spew out a gang of those Kabbalists. But otherwise, you're not going to put them in their deck. You're not going to put a Bishop in your deck. You're not going to put Wounded Zealot in your deck. You probably shouldn't put Human Shields in your deck unless you're doing for a challenge. Crushing Power stuns an enemy troop for 1 energy. That's cool. The artwork is great. Even though it's an Imperial Fist, I have to respect the artwork here. Very nice. For 1 energy, stun an enemy troop. The downside is it's just a troop, so it won't do anything against the enemy warlord. But that can kind of come in handy. Maybe for a draft, it might be useful just to have one of those in the pocket. But there's better things to deal with. I wouldn't put it in a deck. As I said, I wouldn't put Human Shields in a deck unless I'm playing play Relentless troops or play Frontline troops or play troops of cost 1 or less. You could. There's an argument to play Human Shields in like Atesh Tarsa. Maybe some other troop like a 6, Vincent 6, that can increase their health. But you're only increasing the ones that are adjacent to your warlord, and that's not going to do much for the ones that these guys create. So, again, that's another hard pass. Lots of troops here in the 1 to 2 cost range that are going to be hard pass. Into the Warp had a purpose. The art here is phenomenal. Like, I gotta love this. This is great. Floating planets of skulls. I don't even think these are floating skulls. I think these are floating planets of skulls. Or maybe they are. Maybe they are floating skulls that are just dissolving in the warp. But either which way, this had a purpose with the Pale Spear builds for the Alpha Legion for a while there, when it was returning, when they had a lot of tactics for 1 energy, they could add more to the Pale Spear ping. You could still do that, but there's not too many decks that actually benefit from the strategy where you're returning 4 tactics to draw 4 cards, or returning up to 4 tactics to draw up to 4 cards for 1 energy. I would say Agent Sigilate might be one of those that could fall into that, but for the most part, if they have 4 tactics in their hand, those are actually cards that they're going to want to have, versus, they're more troop focused, and a couple of their tactics are ones that they definitely want to keep. If you've got maybe Mechindrites, Calber Hall, perhaps, that's like a free exchange, although you're not going to really want to draw Mechindrites. So, this is a super niche card. This is not a card to consider for most of your decks, 99% of your decks. It's just not. So, it's just not something that you would consider for most of your decks. And I'd pass on it in the shop. It's not something to pick up. Now, I've said this before. I've said this in several videos. It needs to be repeated. Said, Nurglings is a card to pick up. This is a card that you're going to want in your shop. And you might say, wow, 1/3, this is terrible. It's got maintenance 1, backlash, return your hand. This works in so many decks. And I'm not just talking competitive decks, challenge-based decks, backlash, troops that cost less than 2 energy or less, troops that have got 1 or attacked less, play multiple troops. Like, this card works in so many decks. It's so versatile for challenge builds, but it's also versatile in decks that want to have continuous troops, troop threats. Durak Ras can take advantage of having a Nurgling that causes damage to something and follow up with it. You can use a Nurgling and then use a Scorched Earth to get rid of, or Ashen Bones with the Salamanders to get rid of something with just a little ping and then throw out there. Lorgar is going to want Nurglings because it's a demon and it ties into his whispers. Ferrous Manus can make these Nurglings a powerful thing, or even Sanguinius perhaps for their reckoning. Sanguinius might be infantry in Astartes. He might not be troops. The point is, they work in so many decks that they are worth having. They're definitely worth picking up when you get them in the shop. They They're just good. You might not have them in every one of your decks, but every deck that you put them in, they will do work. If you put them in the Falconing deck, guess what? Every turn, that's 3 damage that you just are putting down, and it's recurring, and your opponent has got to spend effort to get rid of these nerdlings instead of putting damage on your warlord. They just are really good. They're probably the best 1 energy card in the game. I mean, that's a big claim. That's a big claim. The best 1 energy card in the game. Maybe maybe top 3. I'd have to take a look, honestly, at the entire pool, but they're up there. They're a top 3 nomination, easy, and they very well could be the best 1 energy cost card in the game. So keep that in mind. If you see them in the shop, they are worth picking up. Cygnus Alkalite is, again, another cultist that you're not going to put in your deck, but there are lots of ways to generate these guys as well, so you'll see them in play. They work very nice with the word bearers, who've got a lot of demon troops as well as infantry troops, so they work hand in hand. Or if you're just playing cultist in general, and you're generating these guys will happily fuel your cultists, so easy enough. But they're not something you put in your deck. You shouldn't be putting Swarm of Flies in your deck either. Don't do that. That's bad. Don't do that. Back in the day, and I say back in the day, that wasn't too long ago, actually. This was an option for very quick Lorgar Reckoning builds. You just throw down some Swarm of Flies and some Nurglings, and you're good to go. Boom. 2 Swarm Flies, 2 Nurglings, Reckoning. That's for 4 energy. It could be done. It can't be done the same way now, and that's all they were ever good for. Outside of that, they're just a 2/2 unstoppable that's quickly killed off. Don't play these guys, and don't play Lord of Flies when he comes out, guys. Just don't. You'll be so happy you didn't. Taint of Chaos. This is a card you could put in your deck. I've got 1 in my Ingethel build just as like a quick add-on if I need it in a pinch. But the Marks of Chaos are very nice, and I should probably go into down below where they actually do so folks can understand if you aren't already aware. You get 1 of these. You get a Mark of Khorne, which gives +2/+0. Or you get a Mark of Nurgle, which gives +0/+2 and poisonous. Or you get a Mark of Slanesh, which gives terror and +1/+0. Or you get the Mark of Zeech, which gives unstoppable and +1/+1. Now, all of these have been changed from what they used to be, and you'll never actually see the artwork for these cards. You'll only ever see that 1 Mark of Chaos card. But that's what you'll do, and you can only get 1 of these each. And then once you get all 4, then your character mutates into a greater demon. And there are several greater demons to choose from. That you don't get to choose, that's just what the game chooses for you. That's completely random. That's the Taint of Chaos. It is a buff to anything that is not a demon. Anything. Vehicle, Custodes. It's true. Astartes, infantry, structures. It doesn't matter. Everything can be tainted by chaos. Now, as I said, it's not something you throw in your deck often, and usually if your deck is focused on doing marks or buffing marks, you've got a warlord like Ingethel, maybe you've got a warlord like Tybalt Mar, who then is going to do something for you with his battle honor. So I wouldn't put it in your deck unless you're putting it in as a pinch, but it's important to know what they do. And it's not a bad buff. It's not a bad buff as far as buffs go. Unreliable Informant. This is another card that is very specific to like 2 decks. The Endred Har deck, it can be useful for to self-ping your warlord to increase his attack. Used to be good. I wouldn't use it now with Magnus for Reckoning. Maybe you could consider using this in a weird, like, slower Alpha Legion build, but there are better options, especially now after Galaxy of Flames. So I wouldn't recommend this. This is another niche card that I would not recommend you pick up. Pass over it. It's not going to do you any good. Void Engagement is not bad. It used to do 3 damage if you drew a card and it was attacked. It used to do 3, but now it just does 2, but it's still very handy, especially for games where you're just playing tactics mostly and you've got a warlord. If your deck has got 16 plus tactics, or even 15, I'd say 15 plus, you should have Void Engagement as 2 of those tactics. If you're below that, I'm on the fence about it, because 9 times out of 10, even though you might have only 1 troop left in your deck, the Void Engagement is going to draw it. So it's a little extra burn, but it's also draw, and that's why it's decent. And it's cheap. It's cheap for 1 energy. So it's a good epic to have for certain decks. Atham is also not too bad. It's a very low cost for a very quick Survivor 2. Or returning a friendly troop to your hand. Now, I very rarely use the return a friendly troop to my hand. I'd rather take the Survivor 2 because the Survivor 2 is a little more permanent, but there are some instances where doing that is useful. Whether that is returning a fast troop to my hand or a troop with a very strong rally effect to my hand. Maybe it's a troop that can heal me and remove a stun. It's possible. Atham can be used in that way. It's a nice tactic. There are better tactics. If you want Survivor of a higher value, you just take Manifest Destiny. It costs a little bit more, but you're going to get more for it. But it's not bad. Is it something to pick up in the shop? I would save my gems. Not that I need to save my gems, but if you've got only enough to get one legendary, there are better legendaries to pick up in the shop. Command Bridge is one of those legendaries. Command Bridge is, I won't say a staple because there are some decks that simply don't need it. Because either they don't play too many tactics or they've got too many tactics. If they've got too many tactics in their deck, Command Bridge isn't doing as much for them. It can help, but then it's just kind of water in the pool. Maybe instead of just Command Bridge, you just want massive draw or other things. But this chooses a tactic, a one of three choice. You pick a tactic, put it in your hand. It helps you get stuff that you want, whether that is a finisher card like Pride of the Emperor, Vengeful Spirit, McCragg's Honor, or it's a support card like a War Gear like Mercy and Forgiveness, or the White Tiger Dow, or whether it's something like, hey, I'm facing stealth, I need my informant network ASAP. It is just really good. Get this card. If you see this card in the shop, and you won't often because neutrals are so many, and it's across three factions, and we only get them in the shop like once every 2 weeks. It will take you forever before you see Command Bridge in the shop. But when you do, if you don't have it, it is worth picking up with your gems. Cultist Acolyte. This is a cultist with a nice little sacrifice ability, so when it dies on your turn, it deals 2 damage to the enemy warlord. It'll draw some fire. It probably won't survive to use that, but if you're using it with, like I said, Atesh Tarsa or somebody else who can protect it, then there you go. If you're not, then at the very least your opponent is throwing fire at the Acolyte as opposed at you. You can combo this in a Wordbearer's deck for 7 energy, play an Acolyte, then play an Ashen Circle, kill the Acolyte. The Acolyte deals 2 damage to the enemy warlord, and then the Ashen Circle can attack and either deal 5 more to the warlord as a fast troop, or 5 to kill a troop and blow up and deal another 2. It's a nice little combo. Fateful Clash. This card is cool. I like the artwork here, but also the ability is very nice, very necessary for some decks. Give frontline to the enemy warlord until your next turn and draws a card for 2 energy. If you are White Scars, you do not have a way to get past frontline. You don't. There are no unstoppable troops in the White Scars. You have some hard removal, and that's about it. Otherwise, you have to rely on your flank troops and your tactics to burn through the front line. But if you play a single Fateful Clash, you can make your opponent's warlord frontline, and you can bypass their frontline for a whole turn. Plus, you're drawing a card. This is a good card to have for decks like that have an issue with frontline. There aren't as many, but there are. Engron is another good example. Engron wants to use that, boom, pull you up. I don't have to hit the big Ogren frontline that you put in front of me. I can just hit you and finish the game. That's a good tool for him. Just as a one-of, it's very worth it. Plus, you get to draw a card, which maybe gives you an extra little boost for what else you might need to finish the effort. If you don't have a problem with frontline, then you don't need to include it in your deck. But it's worth picking up. I would say pick up one if you can. If you see it, pick up at least one. Fire Cultist. Don't put them in your deck. The artwork is cool. I love this artwork. I love the inking here. This is very nice. Good stuff, but not worth putting in your deck, guys. Just not. Even if they're premium. They're not. You're going to generate them. They're 4-1. Guess what? They die just as easy as this 3-1 with 1 health. You know why? Because they've got 1 health. Forbidden Library is an interesting idea. I like the concept. Choose 1 chaos tactic and add to your hand. It costs 1 less for each cultist you control. So if you have a lot of cultists, or if you got even 2 or 3 cultists, you play Forbidden Library. maybe draw, a Planetary Purge, and now it costs for 2, or draw a Pax Chaotica and it's for 7, or a Mass Offering, which costs 7, and then can also be cost reduced even further because your infantry are going to die that turn. It's a cool idea. Maybe for like a Horus Whispers deck, but that's just it. It's not competitive. It's not going to do a whole lot. You don't see cultist decks all over the place. They're a nice little meme. They're a nice little niche thing to play, thematic, but they don't do much beyond that. And you've got to have cultists that survive. There's plenty of ways to spawn massive amounts of cultists, so that's possible. But you don't know what you're going to get either. Like, you could get 3 choices and you're like, wow, Void Engagement, Inner Sanctum, and Silent Death. Thanks, that was worth the effort. So, meh, pass for me. Horus Occultist, I like Horus Occultist. Again, for the same thing, they're following that artwork. They run right next to these guys here. Look at that. Fire Cultist and Horus Occultist just getting along like champs. I just love it. Love that art. But also, as a 2/3, they can actually stick around for a turn. They're going to draw fire because your opponent doesn't want you to attack them to get a Taint of Chaos. But if they do survive, they get that Taint of Chaos. And as we talked about, Taints of Chaos are very nice. I like these in Ingethel too, because she's going to, at the very least, make them a 4 health when she plays them with a Mark of Chaos. So at the very least, they become a 4/4. At the very least, at the best, they become a 2/6. So yeah, that's nice. That's nice. Inner Sanctum. Inner Sanctum is a great idea. This is a great idea. I love the idea of this card, and I was really excited when this got added. Choose 1 troop or tactic in the enemy hand and return it to their deck. Both players draw a card. I think if it didn't have both players draw a card, or if it gave your opponent Sentinel, and then they drew a card, this would be a better card. But I have had a lot of examples, and other players have too, where you play Inner Sanctum and you remove the 1 card that they've got because they're both drawing a card after Inner Sanctum is played, and then they get to draw another card on their turn. They've got 2 chances to redraw that card, and typically they do. So your Inner Sanctum is just basically letting you take a little quick peek at their hand, drawing you a card, and mostly not delaying what was going to happen anyways. So not a great card in execution. In idea, it's a great card. I think it should be better. I think it should give a little bit more. I think if it did, more people would play it. Instead of playing Inner Sanctum, the decks that I was using Inner Sanctum on, I changed for Ruined City, because I found that, like, I may not be messing with their hand, but with Ruined City, Ravage City, I'm messing with their ability, with their unit abilities, and I'm drawing a card for 1 energy less as opposed to the 2. Yeah, this card could be better. Righteous Zealot. This is a card for backlash decks, challenge decks, perhaps. This is one of those cards that's going to give you a Wounded Zealot. That's about it. You're not going to put these in your deck for any other reason. You really shouldn't. Don't. Just don't. Maybe if you're a Word Bearer, you might put a Righteous Zealot in your deck, but you really shouldn't, because the Word Bearers themselves have ways to put cultists and infantry out. So you're kind of diluting your deck by putting in stuff like this. If you don't need to, if you can put stuff in your deck that generates other stuff, that's what you want. That's what you should be focusing on. Seek and Destroy is not bad. This is a great card for a starter, for beginning players. This is also good just to have one-ofs in some matches. This is a first turn response to get rid of a Jubok or a Lord Malkiel, anything that your opponent likes to throw down 3 health or 4 health that you can follow up with. It's not bad. It's replaced as time goes on by other things, but it is a good card. I mean, it's a solid starter card. You shouldn't have to pick it up in the shop, because I think actually you get 2 copies of this card when you start playing the game, so you should be good. You should know what Seek and Destroy does, and you should have opinions of it on your own. Shawa Shan. She's something I play for memes. Back when, and you could still very easily do it, when the Marks of Chaos were different and the Mark of Zeech gave stealth, you could have a turn 2 Greater Demon with Shawashan and Ingethel. Now it doesn't, but you could still have a turn 2 Greater Demon with Shawashan and Ingethel, especially if you've got like Marks of Chaos in your hand. It's a great way to do this. What I would recommend doing, if you really want to do that, if you're going for that meme, and you can do it, it's completely possible, is Ingethel, Shawashan, 2 Marks of Chaos in your deck. Maybe even throw in a Temptation in your deck to give Marks of Chaos. Or what's the other one here? The one that gives 2 Marks of Chaos. Corrupting Influence is kind of the later game, but it gives 2 Marks of Chaos to her, and she uses her ability, and she's got 3, and then you use Ingethel, and you got 4, and boom. But I'd say for if you play her, and then you pump her with Ingethel, and she's got health enough to survive, then the next turn you pump her with Ingethel, use her ability, that's 3 marks, play a Mark of Chaos from hand, 4 marks, guess what? Greater Demon. It's just a meme. It's not going to be something that you should really actually rely on or try to do. Just don't do it, guys. Cygnus Disciple. That's a cool passive as far as like destroy this troop and get +1/+1 to your infantry and demons. You will hardly ever use it because you'll hardly ever play these guys aside from using cards that generate Cygnus troops or Cygnus cultists. Just move on. Move on from this card. Don't play it. If it's on the board, consider playing it. I guess if you have a bunch of infantry and demons, but if you don't, just attack with the 2/2, Cygnus Fanatic, this is one of my favorite cultists. This guy has got 3 health, which isn't a whole lot, but as I said, there are ways to increase his health, especially with Ingethel. And then he heals, fully heals, when a friendly troop dies. Whether that is a Nurgling, whether that is a flanking Vorax, whether that is a troop that you already have more than 1 health, he gains +1 attack, and he fully heals. And if you've got him up to 5 or 6 attack, or he's got Survivor 1, and he's got his health buffed as well, and he fully heals because you flanked with like a Space Wolf flanker, or the 5/3 flanker from the Orphans of War because you're playing Tarsa. Guys, this is a really utility troop. This isn't the best troop by any means. I'm not trying to oversell this troop, but just as a really good cultist troop. If you're playing cultists, this is a card that you want to have 2 copies of in your deck, for sure. Don't just throw him out on his own. You want to typically hold him and throw him out when you have a troop or 2 that's going to die that turn to get his attack buffed, or if you can buff him when you play him as well to increase his health and therefore his chances of sticking around. Temptation gives a Mark of Chaos to a friendly infantry or Astartes, and you draw a card. That's it. That's it. But it's a way to give more Marks of Chaos without having to play Marks of Chaos. It doesn't give it to vehicles. It doesn't give it to structures. It actually is kind of weird that this costs more to give it to Marks of Chaos to less targets. You cannot give it to Custodes. But you do get to draw a card. So that 1 energy there is to draw a card. Trader Crew. Trader Crew, I haven't been able to play with these guys just yet because I've been on different deck kicks, but I like this rally. Rally, choose a Chaos Infantry and add it to your hand. This works really well with a Horus Whispers deck if you're playing that way. If you're playing Cultist, if you're playing Rom and you want to throw down an Ackley and Wordsinger, this is a great way to get some more key Chaos Infantry cards into your hand. So I like that. And I like the fact that it's Chaos, but also Chaos Infantry, which really narrows the pool, so you're not just being able to pull demons out of your gate. You can actually pull something that is thematic. T'Chulch Engine, if you're not looking to that card, then play T'Chulch Engine. If you're not playing Chaos Infantry, this is the other card that you use. The T'Chulch Engine is something that Lion L. Johnson would have you believe he never used, or didn't know what it was, or certainly didn't abuse. But this is a cool card that is easy enough to just straight up tutor a troop from your deck. That's it. 2 energy, starting turn, starting game. Play this. Get your Targhost. Get your Baelai. Get your big troop that you know is the troop that you want to play on curve, and get it in your hand. T'Chulch Engine gets to target it for you and draw it. Now the downside is, as I mentioned, the same kind of thing with Command Bridge, is if you have got too many troops, then you kind of water down your pool for T'Chulch. But at the same time, some of those troops can be very utility, whether they're removing stealth or they're dealing damage. Maybe they're giving can't attack. Maybe they've got flank or fast. You can kind of pick and choose a little bit. just a great card. May not go, you might not be able to make it work in every deck, because there are some warlords who just naturally draw cards or draw troops or create troops. You may not need this for all of those, but this is a good card for a lot of decks. This is absolutely worth picking up when it's in the shop. Undercover Cultist. This is actually better than the old Cygnus Disciple, for the simple fact that they come out with Duplicitous, so they actually stick around for a little bit, and if you're playing a Cultist deck, then they get more value because you can pay 1 energy to draw a Cultist from your deck. But again, I wouldn't play them. It's nice when they get generated, and maybe if you're playing I don't know why you would, but you could put in Defenders of Caliban as just an extra duplicitous troop for Luther for his arch betrayer. But I really wouldn't. Yeah. And we're gonna get to the last 2 energy cost card. Went through them kind of fast, but kind of had to because there's a lot of them. Wonders of Tizca. Heals 2 and removes stun from a friendly unit. This is a good card. This is worth picking up in the shop. This may not be in all your decks, but this will go in a lot of decks for you. If you're a mono warlord, when I say mono, I mean you're a warlord that doesn't play a lot of troops like Engron, maybe Jagathai Khan. This is a card you're going to put in there. If you're a warlord who has to attack to seal the game, you're going to put this in there. It heals 2 and it removes stun. That's really important. It's also just a great heal 2 and remove stun in general. There are only 3 cards. There's 2 neutral cards, I should say. There are 2 neutral cards that remove stun. There's Wonders of Tizca, and there's Pi Alpha Theta of the Mechanica, Pi Alpha 52. You will need 1 or 2 of those to play this game and have better times. Not every time, not every game are you going to get stunned, but if stunning becomes a problem for you, you need to have those cards to be able to answer that. So this is a card worth picking up. It's nice for the heal. The stun removal is the most important part of that. I cannot stress that enough. There's lots of ways to heal in this game. There are not enough ways to remove stun. And that's okay. That's fine. That's good for stun decks. So that is the first part of the Chaos card by card. That is cards Warlords, cards of 0 cost through 2 cost. The next list we're going to get to, part 2, is going to hit cards of energy cost 3 through 6. No, the 3 through 5. 3 through 5. And then 6, 7, 8 are going to be covered in the last video. So stick with me, folks. It'll be a 3-part series through the next couple of weeks, and hopefully some of that is good information for you if you haven't already known the power of Nerdlings. If you already didn't know to skip a lot of these troops, hopefully that sums it up for you. Or at the very least, pass this video on to newer players, maybe, so that need to know what is worth looking into, what is worth picking up, and what cultists, if they want to play cultists, what cultists should they consider. There's a lot more cultists to come, and we will get to them as well. So that's it for me, guys. Until next time, keep playing Legions, and we'll talk to you later.